First Contact and Dismissal. High Admiral Zextal of the Krax Empire stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, his scaled fingers drumming against the crystalline observation panel. The sight before him should have been impressive: humanity's combined defense fleet assembled at the edge of their solar system. Instead, he felt only contempt. "These are their warships?" he asked, mandibles clicking in amusement. "I expected more from a species that's managed to spread across 3 star systems." His second-in-command, Sub-Commander Naira, brought up a detailed holographic analysis of the human vessels. The largest was barely 200 meters in length, practically a shuttle by Krax standards. The Eternal Dominion alone stretched over 4 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull plated with metamorphic alloys that could withstand the heat of a dying star. "Their technology appears rudimentary, High Admiral," Naira reported, her crystalline eyes scanning the data streams. "Basic plasma shielding, conventional mass drivers, and fusion-based propulsion. Nothing that could threaten a proper Imperial vessel." The human ships hung in perfect formation, their dark hulls reflecting the distant starlight. There were hundreds of them, but their size made them look like insects compared to the 20 massive Krax dreadnoughts that had just dropped out of hyperspace. "Open a channel," Zextal commanded. "Let's see what these primitives have to say for themselves." The main viewscreen illuminated, revealing a human female in a crisp blue uniform. Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force had earned a reputation as a brilliant tactician in conflicts with space pirates and rogue colonies. But to Zextal, she looked fragile, soft, like all humans did. "This is Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Force. You have entered restricted space without authorization. State your intentions." Zextal's mandibles twitched in what passed for a smile among his species. "Admiral Chen. I am High Admiral Zextal of the Krax Empire. We've come to evaluate humanity's readiness to join our civilization." "Join?" Chen's expression remained neutral. "Or submit?" "Semantics," Zextal waved a clawed hand dismissively. "The Krax Empire brings order to chaos, strength to weakness. Your species has potential, but you clearly need guidance. Look at your ships, barely large enough to house proper weapons systems. How do you expect to defend yourselves against the true threats that lurk between the stars?" Chen's response was measured, but there was steel in her voice. "Size isn't everything, High Admiral. Humanity has survived and thrived because we understand something your empire seems to have forgotten: adaptation is the key to survival." Several of Zextal's bridge officers chittered with laughter. The humans' bravado was amusing, if nothing else. Their scans showed no hidden weapons platforms, no reinforcements waiting in hyperspace. Just these tiny vessels and their equally tiny crews. "You have one planetary rotation to consider your position," Zextal declared. "Either accept Imperial oversight willingly, or we will demonstrate why the Krax Empire has remained unconquered for 10,000 years. The choice is yours." Before Chen could respond, Zextal cut the transmission. He turned to Naira, who was still studying the sensor readings with perhaps more attention than such primitive vessels deserved. "High Admiral," she said slowly, "I'm detecting some unusual power fluctuations in their ships. The energy signatures don't match any known configuration." "Irrelevant," Zextal interrupted. "Prepare the fleet for combat maneuvers. When dawn breaks over their capital city tomorrow, I want them to see our full might arrayed in their skies. Let them spend their last hours of freedom contemplating their insignificance." As the Krax fleet moved into position, none of them noticed the subtle changes already beginning within the human vessels, microscopic transformations occurring at the molecular level, as if the ships themselves were quietly preparing for something unprecedented. Deep within the EDF flagship Adaptive, Admiral Chen sent a coded transmission to all ships in the fleet: Initiative Phoenix authorized. Begin Stage 1 protocols. The real question wasn't whether humanity's ships were too small. The question was, what would happen when they decided to grow? The warning signs. The Eternal Dominion's science officer, Krivax, couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He'd spent 6 decades studying alien technology, and the energy readings from the human fleet defied every principle of shipboard power distribution he knew. "Sub-Commander Naira," he called out, mandibles twitching nervously. "These readings, they're changing." Naira glided across the command deck, her crystalline armor catching the light of nearby stars. The holographic display showed real-time analysis of the human vessels, their power signatures pulsing in patterns that seemed almost organic. "Explain," she ordered, her own scientific curiosity piqued despite the High Admiral's dismissal of any potential threat. "Their reactor outputs are fluctuating, but not randomly. It's as if..." Krivax adjusted the sensors, "as if their ships are breathing." In the 12 hours since High Admiral Zextal's ultimatum, the human fleet hadn't retreated. They maintained their formation, those seemingly fragile vessels holding position just beyond Mars' orbit. But subtle changes were occurring. The metal of their hulls rippled occasionally, like muscles flexing beneath skin. Naira crossed her arms. "High Admiral Zextal should be informed." "Informed of what?" Zextal's voice boomed as he entered the bridge. "Are the humans finally preparing to surrender?" "No, sir," Naira brought up the sensor data. "We're detecting anomalies in their fleet. Their ships appear to be undergoing some form of molecular restructuring." Zextal chittered dismissively. "Probably trying to reinforce their hulls. A futile gesture against our weaponry." On the main view screen, Admiral Chen's image appeared again. Her expression remained composed, but there was something different in her eyes now, a glint of anticipation. "High Admiral," she addressed Zextal. "Before you make a grave mistake, I suggest you look closer at what you're dealing with. Humanity learned long ago that the best defense isn't always a bigger ship. Your attempts at psychological warfare are as primitive as your technology," Zextal responded. "Though I admit, your species has mastered the art of delaying the inevitable." Chen smiled. "Not delaying, High Admiral. Preparing." As if on cue, the sensor arrays across the Crack's fleet began registering massive energy spikes from the human vessels. Krivax's instruments were registering changes in the molecular structure of the human ship's hulls, changes that should have been impossible. "High Admiral." Krivax called out, his voice urgent. "The human vessels, their hull matrices are shifting. The molecular bonds are reorganizing themselves." "Impossible," Zextal growled. "No species has mastered molecular reconstruction at that scale. The energy requirements alone." "Sir," Naira interrupted, her usual composure cracking. "You need to see this." The view screen shifted to show the human fleet. The tiny vessels were beginning to change. Sections of hull plating were flowing like liquid metal, internal structures were shifting, and components that had seemed decorative were revealing themselves as compressed modules ready to expand. "By the Crystal Throne," someone whispered on the bridge. Admiral Chen's voice came through again, calm and clear, "Consider this a demonstration, High Admiral." Operation Phoenix, Stage 2. The transformation accelerated. What had appeared to be standard hull plating unfurled like origami in reverse, revealing layers of compressed metamaterials that had been stored in higher dimensional space. Weapon systems that had been miniaturized began expanding to their full size. Support struts extended, armor plates realigned, and entire sections of the ships grew as if they were living things. "They're ships," Naira breathed, "they're not small because they have to be. They're small because they choose to be." Zextal's mandibles clacked in agitation. "Launch scout drones. I want detailed scans of every vessel. Find their weakness." But the scout drones' data only confirmed their worst fears. The human ships weren't finished growing. What had started as vessels barely 200 meters long were now approaching kilometer-scale dimensions, their structures optimizing themselves for combat even as they expanded. In the Eternal Dominion's science bay, Krivax finally understood what they were witnessing. "It's not just transformation technology," he reported, his voice filled with professional awe. "They've mastered dimensional compression. Those ships, they're bigger on the inside. They've been carrying their true mass in folded space." On the bridge of the Adaptive, Admiral Chen watched her fleet's transformation with quiet pride. The shock and awe on the Cracks' faces had been worth the wait, but this was just the beginning. The real surprise would come when the Cracks discovered that size wasn't even humanity's greatest advantage. "All ships," she broadcast on the fleet frequency, "prepare for Stage 3 initialization. Show them what adaptation really means." The Cracks Empire was about to learn a harsh lesson. In space, the most dangerous predator isn't always the biggest, it's the one that can change. Transformation revealed. "All batteries, weapons free." Zextal's order thundered across the command channel. The Cracks fleet's massive weapons arrays powered up, filling space with the ominous glow of charged plasma cannons. But the humans struck first. The EDF Adaptive, Admiral Chen's flagship, completed its transformation sequence first. What had started as a modest vessel of 200 meters had expanded into a sleek warship nearly 2 kilometers in length. But it wasn't just bigger, it was fundamentally different. Its hull now bristled with weapon systems that had been concealed in dimensional pocket space, and its very structure seemed to flow like liquid metal. "Stage 3, execute," Chen's voice was calm as steel. "Tactical configuration alpha." The human fleet moved with impossible grace for vessels of their size. The Adaptive's hull rippled, and suddenly its entire forward section reconfigured. Weapon ports shifted position, armor plates realigned, and the ship's profile changed completely, adapting to present the smallest possible target while maximizing its firing solutions. "Impossible," Zextal breathed. "No ship can alter its configuration during combat." The first volley from the Cracks fleet sliced through space, and passed harmlessly through the gaps in the human formation. The human ships were moving in ways that defied conventional space combat doctrine, their hulls flowing and shifting to avoid incoming fire even as they maintained perfect firing positions. "Multiple hits on Dreadnought 7. Naira reported, her crystalline eyes wide with disbelief. They're using our own shield frequencies." That was when Zextal realized the true horror of what they faced. The human ships weren't just changing their size and shape, they were analyzing and adapting to Cracks technology in real time. Each blast that hit their shields was studied, decoded, and countered within seconds. On the Adaptive's bridge, Chen watched the tactical display with satisfaction. "Connect me to the High Admiral," she ordered. When Zextal's image appeared, his mandibles were clicking furiously. "What sorcery is this?" "Not sorcery, High Admiral. Evolution." Chen's voice carried no mockery, only certainty. "Our ships employ smart matter at the molecular level. Every part of them, from hull to core, is composed of programmable materials that can reconfigure themselves based on need. We call it the Phoenix Protocol, death and rebirth in endless cycles of adaptation." As if to demonstrate, the Adaptive took a direct hit from one of the Eternal Dominion's main guns. Instead of exploding, the impacted section of hull absorbed the energy, analyzed its frequency, and reconstructed itself into a perfect defense against that specific weapon. "Impossible!" Krivax shouted from his science station. "The energy requirements, the computational power needed." "Quantum computing cores," Chen explained, almost professionally. "Distributed throughout every molecule of our ships. Each atom is both computer and component, sensor and shield. We learned long ago that size means nothing if you can't adapt." The battle unfolded like a dance of titans, but one where only one side could change its steps. Human ships flowed around Cracks' weapons fire like water, their forms shifting constantly. What appeared to be a vulnerable engine housing one moment became a weapons platform the next. Critical systems relocated within the ship's fluid structures, making it impossible to land a killing blow. High Admiral, Naira's voice was tight with concern, 3 more dreadnoughts reporting critical damage. Their weapons, they're not just adapting to our defenses, they're improving with each shot. She was right. Every volley from the human fleet was more effective than the last, their weapons systems learning and evolving mid-battle. The Phoenix Protocol wasn't just about changing size or shape, it was about continuous, relentless improvement. Signal the fleet to fall back, Zextal ordered, his pride finally cracking in the face of the impossible. We need to regroup and... Sir. Krivax interrupted, genuine fear in his voice. The human ships, they're beginning stage 4. On the main viewer, the transformed human fleet was changing again. But this time, they weren't just growing or reconfiguring. Ships began moving in pairs, their fluid hulls reaching out to each other like mercury droplets about to merge. Admiral Chen's voice came through once more. You wondered how we defend ourselves against the true threats between the stars, High Admiral. Let us show you. Phoenix Protocol, Stage 4, Convergence. The Cracks fleet watched in horror as human vessels began combining, their smart matter merging and reforming into even larger configurations. 2 became 1, then 4 became 2, the resulting ships growing not just in size but in complexity and power. They're not just transforming, Naira whispered. They're evolving. Zextal gripped his command throne, mandibles clicking rapidly. For the first time in his long career, he faced an enemy that made him feel small. And the battle was far from over. Tables turned. The merged human vessels towered in space, each now rivaling the size of the largest Cracks dreadnoughts. But size was no longer the most terrifying aspect of what the Cracks fleet faced. It was the intelligence behind the transformations that truly chilled them. Analysis of convergence complete, the Adaptive's AI announced across the human fleet. New configuration capabilities unlocked. Processing tactical advantages. Admiral Chen watched as her fleet's merged vessels demonstrated their new capabilities. The combined ships weren't just larger, they were exponentially more powerful, their merged quantum cores working in perfect synchronization to push the boundaries of what was possible. Target the Eternal Dominion, Chen ordered. Demonstration Pattern Delta. The nearest merged vessel, a combination of 4 former ships now designated as Titan 1, moved with the grace of a much smaller craft. Its hull rippled and flowed, forming what appeared to be a massive energy focus array. But as the Cracks prepared their shields for an energy attack, the array transformed again, splitting into hundreds of smaller weapons platforms. Evasive action. Zextal roared, but it was too late. Titan 1's attack wasn't just a barrage, it was an intelligent assault. Each projectile adjusted its trajectory in real time, learning from the other's performance. When the Eternal Dominion's shields deflected the first wave, the second wave had already adapted to the shield frequency. The third wave didn't even need to hit the shields, the projectile's phase shifted through them entirely. Hull breach on decks 12 through 15. Naira reported, her crystalline form vibrating with stress. They're not just breaking through our defenses, they're learning from every interaction. Krivax's science station was overwhelmed with data. The human vessels, their combined processing power is allowing them to run combat simulations faster than real-time. They're fighting us using strategies they've already perfected in microsecond-long virtual battles. On the Adaptive's bridge, Chen received tactical updates from her fleet's AI. The merged vessels were performing beyond even their most optimistic projections. Each ship was now a collective intelligence, its smart matter coordinating at the quantum level to predict and counter every crack strategy. Sir, one of Chen's officers reported, Titans 2 and 3 are reporting ready for helical maneuver. Chen nodded. Execute. 2 of the merged vessels began moving in an intricate spiral pattern, their fluid hulls extending tendrils of smart matter toward each other. But instead of combining further, they began generating a massive gravitational vortex between them. By the crystal throne, Zextal whispered as he watched 3 of his dreadnoughts get caught in the artificial gravity well. The human ships weren't just fighting with weapons, they were weaponizing space itself. High Admiral, Naira's voice was urgent. The human vessels are displaying capabilities that violate known laws of physics. Their shared quantum cores are somehow allowing them to rewrite local space-time. She was right. The merged vessels had transcended conventional space combat. They weren't just ships anymore, they were reality-warping engines of war, each one capable of manipulating the fundamental forces of the universe. All vessels, emergency retreat. Zextal ordered, his pride finally shattered. Make for the hyperspace point. But the human fleet had anticipated this. Titan IV, positioned near the system's hyperspace exit point, transformed its entire structure into a massive interdiction field generator. The Crack's fleet's escape route was cut off. High Admiral, Chen's voice came through again, still maddeningly calm. Perhaps now would be a good time to reconsider your position on Imperial oversight. On the Eternal Dominion's bridge, Zextal watched as his mighty fleet was systematically dismantled by ships that seemed to break every rule of warfare he'd ever learned. Ships that could think, adapt, and evolve faster than any static defense could counter. Your ships, he finally asked, mandibles clicking in defeated curiosity, why do you keep them small when not in combat? Chen's response carried a hint of amusement. High Admiral, did it never occur to you that restraint might be a form of strength? We keep our ships compact because we can, because efficiency matters more than intimidation. Size without purpose is just waste. As if to emphasize her point, several of the human vessels began reverting to their smaller forms, their task accomplished. They made it look easy, their massive structures flowing and compressing back into their original configurations with fluid grace. The message was clear. The humans didn't need to maintain their larger forms to prove their superiority. True power lay not in constant display, but in the ability to adapt when necessary. And the Crack's Empire's lesson in adaptation was far from over. Pride's fall. The Eternal Dominion's bridge was silent except for the occasional crackle of damaged systems. High Admiral Zextal stood before his command throne, watching as the last of his dreadnoughts surrendered to the human fleet. The mighty Crack's armada, terror of 1,000 star systems, had been systematically dismantled by ships that could rewrite their own reality. Your terms, Admiral Chen. Zextal's voice carried the weight of 10,000 years of Crack's pride. The human admiral's image appeared on what remained of his main viewer. She looked exactly as she had at the start of the battle, composed, professional, and utterly unaffected by the awesome display of power her fleet had just demonstrated. First, let me show you something, Chen said. With a gesture, she brought up a holographic display. This is a transmission we intercepted from your science officer to your command staff. I believe you dismissed it. Krivax's earlier sensor readings appeared, showing the initial changes in the human fleet. The evidence of what was coming had been there from the start, but Zextal's pride had blinded him to the warnings. Your science officer understood what he was seeing, Chen continued. He recognized that our ships weren't just machines, but evolving organisms. That's why we're having this conversation instead of continuing the battle. The Crack's Empire can learn. Zextal's mandibles clicked slowly. You could destroy us now. Why don't you? Because that's not who we are. Chen's voice softened slightly. Humanity didn't develop the Phoenix Protocol for conquest. We developed it because we knew that survival in this galaxy requires more than just power, it requires wisdom. As if to demonstrate her point, the merged human vessels began a new transformation. Instead of weapons platforms, they reconfigured into massive repair and rescue stations, extending tendrils of smart matter to the damaged Crack's ships. What are they doing? Naira asked, watching as the human ships began repairing the very vessels they had just defeated. Showing you another kind of strength, Chen replied. Our ships can heal as easily as they can harm. The same technology that makes us formidable in war makes us invaluable in peace. The quantum-enabled smart matter flowed over the Cracks vessels, analyzing and repairing damage at the molecular level. Hours of devastating combat were being undone in minutes. You said earlier that the Cracks Empire brings order to chaos, Chen continued. But true order doesn't come from domination. It comes from adaptation, from learning, from growing. That's what humanity has been trying to master. Not just the ability to change our ships, but the wisdom to know when and why to change ourselves. Zextal watched as his mighty dreadnoughts were restored, not to their original state, but to something subtly improved. The human ships weren't just repairing them, they were teaching them, sharing carefully selected aspects of their technology. These improvements to your ships, Chen explained, are our terms. We're giving you the foundation of adaptation technology. Not weapons, but tools. The ability to grow, to change, to become more than you are. What you do with it will determine the future relationship between our peoples. The implications slowly dawned on the Cracks command staff. The humans weren't seeking to humiliate or destroy them. They were offering something far more powerful, the chance to evolve. And if we use these gifts for conquest? Zextal asked, testing. Chen's smile was knowing. The technology we've shared has limitations built into its quantum structure. It can only be used for defense and repair. To access its full potential, the kind of power you saw today, requires something the Cracks Empire will have to learn on its own. And what is that? The understanding that true strength lies not in the ability to dominate, but in the wisdom to adapt. Your empire has survived for 10,000 years through power. Imagine what you could become if you learned to truly evolve. As the human fleet began reverting to their compact configurations, preparing to escort the Cracks ships to a diplomatic rendezvous point, Zextal understood the deepest cut of all. The humans hadn't just defeated the Cracks Empire, they had rendered its entire philosophy obsolete. In a galaxy of rigid empires and static powers, humanity had discovered a fundamental truth: the future belonged not to the biggest or the strongest, but to those who could change. And change, as the Cracks were learning, could begin with a single moment of humility. Helm, Zextal ordered, straightening his ceremonial armor, set course to match the human flagship. We have much to learn. The age of static empires was over. The era of adaptation had begun.